All right, good morning. How's everybody doing on this Monday morning? Hopefully, you have a nice start to your week. And I'm just refreshing the feed here to make sure everything's showing up for you guys appropriately. Excellent. All right. This is Paint with Lovejoy. We've been doing this for almost 2.5, 3 months now, it seems like. And these are daily demos and they're all viewer requests. So if you have something that you'd like me to paint in the future, leave a comment or leave something in the chat. And you can see future subject matters on the main portion of my Paint with Lovejoy YouTube page. So a few things of what you're looking at right now. We've got our colors that we're using. And today I put on the list Umber. I will show you how to make the Umber with the raw sienna and the black, just in case you don't have that, but I don't think I've used that color in some of my prior demos, so kind of a new one out there. And I'm working on an 8 by 10 panel. Some of you might be on a stretched canvas, so it might be a little bit higher. So I recommend if you're on a stretched canvas, when you bring your color to the edge, just wrap it around the sides. That way you paint the edges. And we do have our line drawing already on here, so you've got two options on how to get this on your canvas. You can pause the video, draw what you see, and then pick up the video for the painting portion. Or there's a link in the description box below for what I call a traceable. You can purchase the traceable, download it, print it out, and then with carbon paper, you transfer that to your surface. And there's also a video on how to transfer with the carbon paper. But the traceables are awesome for my first time and beginner painters, so that way you can get your initial composition on your canvas, not stress out about drawing, and jump right into painting. So whichever option that you choose, just get your composition on the canvas and then pick up the painting, pick up the video for the painting portion. So for our dog today, hopefully I will pronounce the particular name of this puppy correctly, a Belgian Tervuren. Not quite sure I pronounced that right. I know, Rhonda, these are your particular breed of dogs that you support, so you could probably put the phonetic pronunciation up there for me and I'll give it another go. But like names, I am so prone to mispronounce everything. That's the dyslexia when I am looking at what I'm reading. All right, so enough with that. Let's get into painting. We are going to give this guy a blue background, and there's not a whole lot of it on there. And then we're going to move into, he's got kind of nice lighter tan colors, and then a really pretty dark mask. And then the tips of the ears are a little bit darker. And that's where we're going to be using the umber a little bit. So we're going to start with the background first, and you get to make whatever color you want. I'm going to be using a medium blue. So I'm pulling some of that white aside, adding some blue, and get to whatever shade that you want for your blue. If you want purple or teal or anything, please feel free to switch up colors on any of my videos, any of the paintings that I do. So as you're slapping your paint on here, you can make kind of X marks like that. You can try a full width of the brush or sideways, but doesn't really matter. And even if you want to finger paint, go right ahead and do that. But we're going to be filling in all the edges from the lines of our dog to the edges of the canvas. And like I said earlier, if you're on a stretched canvas, just carry this color around the tops, the sides, and the bottom. And should you paint on the inside of your dog today, don't freak out. Acrylic paint dries pretty quickly, and you just let it dry and then paint something else on top of it. You are more than welcome to use, you don't have to use paint to complete these videos. You can just use the video as a guideline. And if you have crayons, markers, colored pencils, watercolors, anything that you have at home, you can follow along and just swap out your materials for what you have at home. I highly encourage that it's just more important to go through the process of creating and create something rather than creating something that is absolutely perfect. You have to get through a bunch of paintings before you can get to that perfect one. And keep in mind that perfection is relative. What you find perfect right now, a year from now, you're not going to find, you might have a different opinion of what that perfect is. So perfection is relative to each person. All right, so let's see. Oh, see a bunch of you guys on the chat. Nice. So we've got Rhonda and Denise and Neva. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us today. All right, so we've got our background on here, and should you want to change your background, this is called wet on wet blending. So if you want to go a little bit darker, you can grab some of that dark direct blue, kind of slap it on there. And again, this is optional. You don't have to do it unless you want to. Then I wipe off excess paint and then start moving that on top of it. And actually that was quite a bit of blue, so I'm going to take off some of that excess paint. There we go. And now just kind of smooth it into it. And you'll notice that the color underneath mixes with the color that you put on top. So it's just kind of a lot of fun to just kind of play with the colors and the shade. You can do the same thing with white if you want a place that's a little bit lighter. And as you do this, you will start to realize the difference between putting a light color compared to a dark color on top of paint. The lighter colors get eaten up very quickly, so you may have to reapply generously the lighter area, the lighter color, compared to I actually had to take off some of that blue on the bottom when I added it. And the more that you paint, the more you're going to kind of find a comfort level in that, the more your brain's taking in the information and getting comfortable with just the painting process and mixing paint. So when you're in the beginning stages of painting, trust your instincts, try a bunch of different things. You may end up finding more things that you don't like rather than what you like, but that is how you get to the point of the things that you like. You have to go through a bunch of different trials and errors to find what you actually like. All right, so just looking to see if there's any questions. If you guys have any questions at all, just throw them on the chat and I will address them. So we're gonna move into our dog now. And we're actually gonna start with his mask. We're gonna go pretty dark. He's got a great little, almost little diamond shaped mask right here. And then the edges of its ears are pretty dark. So we're gonna start with black first, and then we'll actually do a little bit of our umber, and then we'll work into our tans. I'm gonna keep with the middle flat brush. If you need to move down to the pointy brush, feel free to do that. Switch out anything that you might need to make your painting process a little bit more comfortable. So like I said, I'm gonna start with black, and I'm gonna place these in a few different areas, and then we'll move down to our next color. And as you are following along at home, I want you to just observe the place that I put each color and the shape that I make with it. And to the best of your ability, just try to mimic that at home. And what you're doing is strengthening your eye-hand coordination by looking on the screen, observing, analyzing, and then trying to apply that to your canvas. And this is a skill that as you build it in the art world and in your creative painting effort, it will actually show up in other areas of your life. The power of observation is actually great for many, many, many professions out there in the world. Even for friendships, people love it when you are a little more observant and notice when they get their hair cut or they're wearing something new. So as you paint, you strengthen that ability, that power of observation. Basically, I'm just trying to get you more excuses to continue to paint. All right, so as I was applying these little dots, or these little sections, they were just basically dots and little dash marks. We're gonna do a few spots in the ear, and on the nose, and then we'll move into our umber. So on the nose, we're gonna go right here. And it's okay, they are gonna look kind of weird, kind of odd and funny in their beginning stages, or like a weird Dalmatian or a weird zebra. It's just part of the painting process. And it's a part of what it looks like as we transition from a majorly white canvas surface space into this illusion that we will be creating. Okay, so I think we're good on the dark spots right now. We may actually go back and add more. All right, so I'm actually going to take a little bit of the black and then my umber. We're still staying pretty dark, but I basically am trying to step down. If you don't have umber, you can use dark gray, or actually let me grab the other brush and I'll show you how you can make your own umber with raw sienna. So if you don't have umber, You can make it by starting with a little bit of your raw sienna, a little bit of black, and you may have to kind of go back and forth and adjust, but it comes pretty close to that color. I would say with the raw sienna, this is a bit warmer compared to that being a little bit cooler. And as you get more and more into the painting process, you'll be able to recognize something that looks a little more warm compared to something that looks a little bit cool. So don't freak out if you can't determine that right now. That will come with more of practicing your observation. Okay, so if you need to make your own umber, go right ahead. Or if you want to use dark gray, you can. And let me get that excess paint off. And it may look one way here. Let's put a few little tests. There is a slight difference between my black and my umber. I'm going to make it a little bit more intense for you guys, so it's a little more obvious as I'm painting on the screen. So I'm going to be using a bit more of just the direct umber. It's still pretty dark, and I still have to apply it kind of thick just to compensate. But I'm basically going to kind of fill in the rest of his little mask, and then we'll put a few highlights on there, and then we'll start moving into the lighter tan furs on the top of his head and everything. So again, just kind of observe the place of where I'm putting this, which is going to be a lot of filled in spaces around here. And then we will put some lighter colors on top of this for one more shade, one more value. Now, as you're doing this and you're coming up next to the black paint that we already put on here, if your black is still wet, you can do a little bit of, oh, sorry, my cat's just totally shook the, okay, it's still in the same place. Apologize for the shaking of the camera just a minute ago. My little cat Zuzu is having her wildcat phase right now, and she hit the stand. So, going back to what I was saying, if your black paint is still a little bit wet, when you overlap it with this umber color or your next color, you can slightly blend the two colors together and kind of get rid of that harsh line that might be between the two. So just something to try and look at as you're painting. And let's see, this comes up underneath his eye. Right now it looks like he hung out and played in the dirt and had a great time. And let's see, let's go ahead and bring this right underneath his eye. With acrylic paint, I do lots of layers. We only do a few layers on these demos, just given the time frame. But don't be afraid if you're using acrylic paint to put a bunch of layers on. Let it dry and put another set of layers, let it dry, keep going. And just keep observing how you're looking at it different with each layer and how you're creating this 3D illusion of a 3D object on a flat 2D surface. You know, that's quite amazing to accomplish. And the more that you observe how it changes and grows with each layer, the more that your brain is taking in all that great information and compiling your own kind of creative knowledge in your head. All right, oh, let's get that little chin in there. And his nose is pretty dark. I'm going to go ahead and throw this on here just to kind of fill in that space, and then we'll define his nose in a moment with some of the lighter colors. And if you have any spots where you can see the little bit of that canvas showing through, just go back and either apply it a little bit thicker or you can apply a second coat. All right, oh, let's get those ears. Forgot about the ears. And I did put a little bit of red on my plate. I think I forgot to put it in the description box as one of our colors. But there is a little hint of pink on the inside of his ears that we'll be adding. right. And oddly, I really do like this umber color. There's something just nice and grounding about it. Okay, so we will likely come back to that color, but we're going to move into our next shades. So I'm going to clean the brush really good. We're going to move into the raw sienna, put that in a few spots, and then we're going to start toning down that color a little bit more. All right, so that raw sienna just by itself, it's kind of around his ears. And again, I'm just applying it really thick because I am using student grade paint. Since my channel is geared towards first time and beginner painters, I use the paints that I recommend that you use as a beginner painter. So that way you can see what it looks like. You're a little more familiar with it as you work with it. And we had the question yesterday, I think Denise, you were asking that. I will be making more intermediate level classes, and I'm going to be using artist grade paint for that. So it'll be a nice comparison to see the difference between the different quality of paint. And as you are in the beginning stages of your painting process, student grade paint is affordable and you can do a lot with student grade paint, but there is a nice feel to the artist grade paint, and it's usually a little bit better quality and a little bit better saturation of colors. But with that comes the price tag. They usually are a little bit more expensive. So I generally recommend going up one color at a time. Maybe when you're out of yellow, maybe try an artist grade yellow after that, and just get a feel for what you like. In my professional work, I actually use both student grade and artist grade paint. Because I like some of the transparency effects for the layering that I do in my work, so that way it works for me. So it's not that one is better than the other, it's just there are different materials suited for the results that you want to go for or the project you might be working on. Okay, so now we're actually taking that raw sienna and white. We're going for kind of a medium raw sienna. And it's actually almost warmer than I want it to be. So we're going to do one other mixture. So I'm going to clean the brush out really good, and we're going to do a color comparison to see which one I want to use. So we're going to try a medium umber. Yep, that's closer. All right. So we're actually going to be using the umber. And sometimes that happens. This, like I said earlier, this is warmer than I want it to be. And his fur is a little bit cooler. So we're going for a medium umber. So that was the umber with white and about a 1-to-1 ratio. And then we'll be going a little bit lighter from here. All right, and as I apply these, I'm going to start moving into dash marks like this, kind of like we did with the tiger yesterday. And again, just kind of thinking that each dash mark is a strand of fur on this dog. And it does look like my blue is starting to dry, but if your paint, your background is not dry, just be really careful so that way you're not picking up that blue paint and bringing it into the fur color. So if your blue's still wet, either let it dry, or if you end up picking up that color, just wipe it off with a paper towel on your canvas and then reapply the correct color. All right, and this is around his eyes, yep. And if you have to make this medium shade a second or third time, and maybe it's a little lighter or darker, that's okay. Don't freak out about that. Let's see, we got a little bit inside of his ears. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you guys to breathe. Make sure you're inhaling and relaxing while you're painting. Even if I just made you laugh a little bit, that's good. And let's see, no questions at the moment. All right, excellent. All right, right, so just continuing to fill in this space. This is a cute little dude. And if some of your other colors are still wet, like some of my tan is still wet, some of the umber's still wet, just kind of play with it, use light pressure, and if you're finding that you're picking up too much of the tan or the umber, just wipe off your brush again and then pick up your appropriate color. So, like I said earlier, your brain's taking in a lot of information each time that you paint. And it's very healthy just to switch directions, switch gears in your brain and do something creative to counter a lot of the structure, regular work that you do in your daily life. All right, so now, oh, let me do a few more. Let's connect these two. Now we're going to go even lighter, so I'm just basically adding more white, and it has just a hint of the umber. So we're going super light umber now. Same thing, I'm holding that brush sideways, thinking that each brush stroke is a strand of fur. So moving it in the direction of the fur. And if you get into a groove and then you realize that your brush strokes keep getting whiter and whiter and whiter, take a look at your brush. Do you have a lot of paint on there where the bristles and the metal meet? And if you do, wipe off that excess paint, maybe clean your brush really good, and then that's going to bring them back together, those bristles. All right, so basically I'm going to fill in the rest of this white space. Then we're going to move up to the ears and the eyes, and then we're going to kind of put in some other highlights on top of our base color. And we're getting to what I call the underpainting. The underpainting is when we've gotten rid of all the white canvas space and there's nothing, no canvas space left. Then we actually look at the painting different, because it is amazing how much this white of the canvas space affects our interpretation of what we're painting and what we're looking at. So if you are in the habit of taking your progress pictures while you paint, which I highly recommend, go back and look at your progress photos and just start taking a mental note of how you look at each picture a little bit differently, maybe how the image forms and takes shape as that white space is chiseled away on the canvas. So a lot about painting is observing yourself, understanding, and asking your subconscious different questions, you know, of things you want to figure out. And that's why art is a really personal experience. You know, each person wants to get something a little bit different out of it. Okay, let's see, we've got a few little highlights over here to put. So I'm still on that white with a little bit of the umber on here. Just trying to see what other places they need to go. And I'm trying to cover up my lines here. When I transfer my traceable, I go over the lines with a Sharpie marker, so that way you guys at home makes it easier to see if you're drawing what you see and you're looking at the screen. You do not have to do the Sharpie markers on yours. Okay. All right, so now we're going to go into the ears, and I'm actually going to keep with this same super light umber that we're using. So I'm going to grab some of that, put it over here next to my red, and a tiny, 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 can't even stress enough how much a tiny amount of red is going to change this. So I grab a little bit of red. I like to kind of push it off on the side, because even that was quite a bit, and then start mixing it in, and then I can pull more of that red in as I need. And that's actually pretty close. I'm going to make it a little bit brighter, a little bit more intense just for you guys at home so it's easier to see. And that very quickly went too much. So I'm going to grab more of my umber and white. There we go. So sometimes mixing paint is a back and forth. You don't always get it right on the first try. And we're going to fill in these ears, and then we're going to get the eyes on there, and we'll start going back with our second layer of colors. But yeah, this guy looks really cute. And yep, it feels so much better. We're almost there. Okay, actually before I switch brushes, we're gonna do one more thing in the ears while the paint is wet. And because it's already pretty, we just applied it, so it's still pretty wet paint, I'm going to take some of that white. We've got a little bit of area here and here. So literally I'm just slapping that paint on there, wiping off that excess paint, and then with light pressure, we're just going to kind of squish, smush that white in there. So that way we're making a little bit of a lighter shade on top of that pink we just placed. Okay, so let's go to those eyes. This little dude's got some pretty dark eyes. Let's see, they're not quite as dark as the Umber, and I didn't put the burnt sienna on there. So let's see, let's keep these guys a little bit more brown. So I'm going to start with the raw sienna first, and we're going to add some black to it. And I do want the eyes to be a little bit warmer. So that's why I'm starting with the raw sienna compared to the Umber, because we're going to get close to that Umber color, but I want it warmer. And here you can see I actually added more black than I needed, so adding some more raw sienna. All right, and then we're going to fill in these eyes. And I'm going to apply this pretty thick. And like I said, it is very, very close to our Umber, but just we have a little hint of warmth because we use the raw sienna instead. Now, as you're painting the eyes, if you go over the pupil or you go over that white dot, don't freak out. We can reapply it. And when I redo the pupils, I'm going to go over that white dot on purpose just so I can show you guys how to reapply it. And let's see, I'm actually not liking that little line down there. So I'm going to clean the pointy brush. I'm actually going right into the Umber. And this little extra area here, I'm just going to fill it in. We're going to redefine that eye. We use black paint when we get to that. Okay, so now we actually have to go back to the muzzle and start getting some of those highlights on there. Because right now we don't have any definition on the nose or around the eyes. So since we were using the Umber, we're not going to go quite that light Umber. But I'm taking the Umber, we're going to add a touch of white to it. We're still staying pretty dark. But basically we're going to go a little bit lighter than what we were just using for that second color for the video. And let's see, let's start underneath here under his eyes. And again, just kind of observe the placement of where I'm putting this color and mimic that to the best of your ability on your canvas. And I'm going to go a touch lighter on mine so it's easier to see for you guys. Going right above that nose, and then we're going to curve this highlight around. So as you get into the painting process, and especially as you get kind of from your underpainting on, get in the habit of getting out of your chair and looking at your painting from a distance of 5 to 10 feet away. And it looks entirely different from that distance compared to 2 feet in front of you. So as you get into these stages, get in that habit, look at it from a distance, and then come back and go, based on what you looked at from that distance, do you need to make your highlight brighter? Do you need to make your darks darker? Do you need to adjust something? Is it not translating correctly? And this is something that you're going to do on every painting you ever create, anything creative that you do, even if it's in a different medium. So you're starting to converse with your own kind of creative efforts and with your painting. The canvas always wins, so don't fight it. But you're just learning to observe more, strengthening that power of observation even more. We are going to come back in here with some black, and that's going to make the eyes pop. We'll redefine the nose a little bit. So a lot of times with painting, it really comes down to the last 10% of putting the details on there. I wish it did not, but it does. Okay, so I'm actually going to go back up to the Umber and black mixture. All right, pretty dark, and we're going to start overlapping. And here, Again, wipe off that brush if you've got a lot of buildup on there, because we are kind of keeping with these little dash marks. And where the dark fur from the mask of the face is overlapping the lighter fur, we're going to make kind of try light pressure, make these little kind of fur lines overlapping the lighter area. So as you're doing this, kind of keep light pressure, treat your brush like a pencil. You can add a touch of water to your paint, but you never want it dripping wet. And the more that you do this, the more comfortable you'll get with holding the brush and treating it like a pencil and using that light pressure. So if this is your first or second painting and you're finding these lines difficult, don't quit painting. Just know that with practice, you're going to get more and more comfortable. Like anything, your muscles are learning a lot right now. They're figuring out how to hold the brush. They're figuring out your pressure, your eyes taking in all the information each time you mix a color, what it looks like, how it interacts. Basically, be nice to yourself. We do not live in a society where they're nice to individuals. So you have to be nice to yourself, especially when you're learning something new. All right, so I'm just kind of getting some of these darker lines around the ears, still overlapping my other colors to kind of keep with that fur little vibe we've got going. And still using the umber and black mixture. And then here, as we even start overlapping that blue background, same thing, just keep that light pressure. I do have a few of these little dark hairs shooting off over here. And it is kind of nice once you start seeing this overlapping the lighter areas. Again, it's the exact same color that we've used on top of the darker areas, but it looks different when we put it on top of the lighter areas. And again, that's some color theory. If you are finding that your hand is shaky as you are going to touch the canvas with the brush, that means you're holding your breath. So if you exhale as you touch the brush to the canvas, you'll be a little more successful with that. And again, practice, practice, practice. And a lot of times, even the photograph that I'm looking at, I'm actually putting some of this dark color in places that it's not on the photograph, just so it helps with the contrast of this darker color on top of the lighter color to help give that illusion of the depth of the fur. So a lot of times when we are painters creating this magical illusion on a flat surface, we are doing a lot of illogical things to create this illusion. That's why you're a magician. All right. We're going to go in with some black next. Same thing right here, just overlapping one color with another. All right, so clean that brush off. Oh, I think I see a few quick, or at least more chat happening. Nice, nice. Glad you guys are liking it. And Beverly, glad you are trusting the process. Yes, it does take a while to get there, but once you do and kind of have that light bulb moment where you're like, ah, there it is, then it's just like, then, you know, it's even more fun when you get into the creative process. So I'm glad you got to that point to where you saw it. So keep trusting yourself and keep pushing your skills. All right, so going back to the black paint, I'm gonna go actually back to that nose, kind of outline the nose. And then I'm gonna go back up to the eyes. We'll do eyeliner, and then we're gonna put the pupils of the nose back on there. So again, hold that brush, treat it like a pencil. If you need to put your pinky out somewhere to kind of steady your forearm or your wrist, or if you need to rest your forearm against the edge of the table, go right ahead. And as I do the pupil on this eye, I am on purpose going to get rid of that white spot because that is a common thing that happens. So I'll show you how to reapply it. So if you go over your little white dot, don't freak out. And again, make sure you breathe. Exhale as you touch the brush to the canvas. And then I'm gonna do the same thing on this eye, just because it's easier. When we do our white catch light again, we wanna make sure that dot is going in the same spot on both eyes. All right, now I'm just gonna go back with a little bit of black on a few areas. And right now he looks kind of like a zombie now that we lost those little white catch lights. He won't look like a zombie forever, don't worry. Let's get this little mouth line. All right. All right, so for that white little catch light, clean that brush really good. We're going to use pure white paint. You can reference the traceable again for where it's at, but again, you basically want to put this dot in the same spot on both eyeballs. And literally you just kind of touch your brush to the canvas and then pick your brush right back up. I do recommend letting the black dry before you do that. I did not, just given that it's a live video, but that will make it a little bit easier for you. So now I'm actually going to take a super light gray. Actually, you know what? Let's just go with pure white because it's going to start to diffuse because some of my paint's still wet. So if your paint's fully dry, make a light gray. Otherwise, you could use white. And we're going to put a few extra little highlights in here. So let's actually start on the fur over here. And you're going to notice that the white, especially the student grade paint, is on the transparent side. So you're going to see that I grab paint every 2 or 3 brush strokes. So that's just a good habit to get into, especially with the student grade paint, because you're going to get into this groove, but unless you keep grabbing more paint, you're going to basically be going through the effort of the brush strokes, but not applying any paint. So basically, no matter what tools you're using, adapt and adjust based on the materials that you are using for that day, or even the variables for that day. If you paint outside, that's a different set of variables compared to painting inside. Your dry time on your paint will be different outside versus inside. And again, I'm just putting these white dash marks, lines, kind of moving again in the direction of the fur, but just putting them in a few different areas. And again, just take note of your photos at how different it looks once we add what we call the highlight value on here. Okay. I'm gonna take a quick look through the phone, see how it's translating. Oh, that's a cute little dude. All right. Okay, and again, if you are inclined to do something to the painting that I do not do, go ahead, trust your instincts, do that. No matter what you paint, whether you change stuff or not, please email me photos of what you paint. Send them to paintwithlovejoy@gmail.com. Share your paintings with your community, share your experience with your community. You guys encourage people to paint way more than I do. When they see your paintings, when I post your pictures on social media, I always get a couple class signups or people purchase one of the traceables or something. But please keep telling people how much fun it is to paint and encourage more people. We need more relaxed people in this world, and at least creativity is one avenue to get them there. All right, so I think this brings us to the conclusion of today's video. Really appreciate you guys, taking time out of your day, hanging out with me, encouraging. I love all the suggestions. You're getting me to paint stuff that I wouldn't normally choose to paint. So it's good all around. All right, so looks pretty good. Oh, there goes my cat hitting the tripod again. Sorry about that. She gets very excited. This is about her witching cat hour before the nap time. All right, so hope everybody has a great day. I will be here tomorrow at 11 o'clock as well for the next demo. And yeah, so hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you then. Cheers.